They told him the sea was alive. He laughed, and built his house anyway. The glass house stood alone by the shoreline, clear walls, silent rooms, and a perfect view of the ocean. Every morning, the waves bowed gently at its feet, as if in respect. Every night, the water whispered like it was trying to speak. At first, the signs were small. Footprints appeared on the wet sand, leading straight to his door, then vanishing. The glass walls fogged up from the outside, even under the hot sun. Sometimes, late at night, something tapped softly on the glass, slow, patient, deliberate. He told himself it was the wind. The tide. His imagination. But the sea did not stop watching. One evening, as the moon bled silver across the water, he saw her, just for a second. A shape beneath the waves. Eyes that glowed where no light should reach. A smile that was not kind. That was the night the warnings became a promise. And the sea began to rise. Elliot Crane did not come to the sea because he loved it. He came because he was tired of everything else. For most of his life, Elliot lived among noise, cars screaming through narrow streets, neighbors arguing through thin walls, phones ringing at hours meant for sleep. His mind never rested. Even when his eyes were closed, his thoughts kept moving like waves crashing inside his skull. So when he first saw the land by the sea, he believed he had found silence. The land sat alone, far from the tourist beaches. No hotels. No boats. No laughter. Just endless water stretching into the horizon and a narrow strip of sand that looked untouched, almost avoided. The locals called it Dead Reach. Elliot called it perfect. He bought the land without hesitation. The papers were signed quickly, almost too quickly, as if the land itself wanted him gone once the deal was done. When the architect asked what kind of house he wanted, Elliot answered without thinking. "A glass house," he said. "All glass. I want to see the sea from every angle." The architect hesitated. "Glass doesn't forgive pressure," he warned. "The sea carries weight." Elliot smiled. "I'm not afraid of the sea." Construction began. As the glass walls rose, fishermen stood at a distance and watched in silence. Some shook their heads. Others refused to look for too long. An old man approached Elliot one evening and spoke softly. "This shore breathes," the man said. "You don't put weight on something that breathes." Elliot thanked him and went back to supervising the work. He mistook politeness for wisdom. When the house was finished, it looked unreal, like a dream someone forgot to wake up from. Sunlight passed through it freely. The sea reflected endlessly in every direction. Standing inside felt like floating. Elliot moved in alone. The first night, as he lay on his bed surrounded by glass and darkness, the sea was unusually quiet. Too quiet. The first week was calm. Elliot woke early, made coffee, and watched the sunrise spill gold across the water. He felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from his chest. For the first time in years, his thoughts slowed down. But the sea did not behave the way it should have. Waves crashed normally everywhere else, except in front of the house. There, the water moved gently, almost carefully, as if touching something fragile. Elliot noticed small things. Seagulls avoided flying over the water near the house. Fish jumped farther down the shore, never close. At night, the moonlight dimmed where the water met the sand, as though swallowed. One afternoon, Elliot walked along the beach and felt a sudden chill. The sun was hot. The air was warm. But the water around his ankles was freezing. He stepped back quickly, heart racing, laughing at himself. That night, while sitting in his living room, Elliot heard a sound that made him sit up straight. A slow splash. Not waves. Something entering water, gently. He walked closer to the glass wall. The sea was dark, thicker than usual. Then the surface moved. just for a second. Like something large had rolled beneath it. Elliot stepped away from the glass. For the first time since moving in, he locked his doors. The warnings did not come loudly. They came softly. Patiently. The next morning, Elliot found footprints on the sand. They were not human. Long, narrow. Slightly curved. They came from the water and stopped at the base of the glass wall, directly beneath his bedroom window. There were no footprints leading back. Elliot stared at them for a long time, feeling his stomach tighten. He told himself the tide must have washed the rest away. Still, he erased them quickly. That evening, fog rolled in suddenly, thick and heavy. The glass walls turned cold. Elliot watched as moisture formed on the outside, not the inside. Then, slowly, letters appeared. One stroke at a time. As if written by a careful hand. This land is not empty. Elliot stumbled backward, breath shaking. When he turned the lights on, the words faded. That night, he heard tapping. Not knocking. Tapping. Gentle. Curious. Tap. 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 Elliot did not look. Because some part of him already knew. The sea was no longer just water. It was aware. After the tapping began, sleep became difficult. Elliot lay awake most nights, staring through the glass ceiling at the dark sky, listening to the sea breathe. He started counting the seconds between waves, hoping to find a pattern. There was none. Some nights the sea paused. As if waiting. One early morning, just before sunrise, Elliot noticed the water pulling back farther than it ever had before. The tide retreated slowly, exposing rocks covered in black slime and deep cuts in the sand that looked like scars. That was when he saw movement. At first, it looked like a shadow drifting under the water. Then the shadow stopped. And rose. A pale figure emerged just beneath the surface. Long hair floated around her like dark smoke. Her upper body looked human, but her skin reflected light like wet stone. Her eyes opened. They glowed faintly, not bright, but deep. Like light seen through thick water. She did not blink. Elliot's breath caught in his throat. The figure did not come closer. She stayed where the water met the sand, half hidden, half revealed. Her gaze never left the house. Then she lifted one hand. The sea around her stilled completely. She pointed, not at Elliot, but at the ground beneath the house. The water rushed back suddenly, and she vanished. Elliot collapsed onto the sand, shaking. He told no one. Elliot tried to regain control. He installed stronger lights around the house. He placed cameras facing the sea from every angle. He reinforced the foundation, driving steel deeper into the ground. The sea did not resist. It waited. The first message appeared 3 nights later. Elliot was sitting alone when the glass wall fogged again, quickly this time. The temperature dropped, and his breath turned visible. Words formed slowly, letter by letter. You built on a vein. Elliot backed away. What does that mean? He whispered. The tapping came again, louder now. Tap. 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 A camera feed flickered on the screen. For just a second, he saw her face up close. Her eyes filled the frame. Her mouth opened slightly. Then static. That night, Elliot dreamed of the sea floor. He saw cracks running through the earth, glowing faintly, pulsing like veins. Water flowed through them like blood. A voice echoed through the water. You are pressing on a wound. He woke up coughing, his mouth filled with salt. By now, the sea had changed. The water level rose a little every night. Not enough to flood, but enough to remind him. Dead fish washed ashore, arranged in lines facing the house. Their eyes were wide, their bodies untouched by decay. Elliot stopped going into town. The house groaned under pressure. The glass walls made sounds, tiny sharp pops like bones adjusting. One evening, the sea went completely silent. No waves. No wind. The mermaid emerged fully this time. She stood at the edge of the water, her lower body hidden beneath the waves, her upper body perfectly still. "You were warned," she said. Her voice was calm. Not angry. Worse, certain. This shore is alive. It moves. It breathes. You sealed it. Elliot shook his head. "I built for peace," he said. "I didn't mean harm." She tilted her head slightly. "Intent does not undo damage." The water rose around her legs. "Leave before the next moon," she continued. "This is the last kindness." Then she sank beneath the waves. The tide surged higher that night. And the glass house began to crack. Elliot packed his bags 3 times. And unpacked them 3 times. Every time he placed his clothes into the suitcase, he looked around the glass house and felt something twist inside his chest. He had poured his money, his dreams, his escape into these walls. Leaving felt like admitting failure. The sea sensed his hesitation. That night, the wind returned, but only around the house. It circled the glass walls, pressing against them like unseen hands. The sea crept closer, inch by inch, licking the edges of the foundation. Elliot sat on the floor and whispered, "I'll leave tomorrow." The house responded with a sharp crack. A thin fracture appeared in the glass wall facing the sea. It did not spread. It simply stayed there, visible, patient. Like a countdown. On the night of the full moon, the tide pulled back farther than ever before. So far that the sea floor was exposed for hundreds of feet. The air smelled wrong, old, heavy, like something buried had been uncovered. Elliot stepped outside, drawn by a silence that felt louder than noise. The mermaid stood in the distance, surrounded by retreating water. "This is your last moment," she said. "When the sea returns, it will not stop." Elliot opened his mouth to speak, but the sea inhaled. Water rushed forward with terrifying force. The ground shook. The glass house screamed as pressure slammed against it. The first wall shattered. Not violently. Beautifully. Thousands of glass pieces fell like rain. The sea poured into the house. Furniture floated. Walls collapsed. The house filled with the sound of breaking and bending in surrender. Elliot ran, slipping on water and shattered glass. He reached the center of the house just as the roof gave way. Through the rising water, he saw her. The mermaid floated calmly inside the ruined structure, untouched by the chaos. "This was never punishment," she said. "It was correction." The sea lifted Elliot gently, and then let him go. When the water finally pulled back, the house was gone. Only broken glass beneath the waves remained, glittering like a warning. Years passed. The shoreline healed. Grass returned. Fish swam freely again. The sea breathed evenly. Locals placed warning signs along the coast. No building beyond this point. At low tide, some say you can still see glass beneath the water, shining faintly. And sometimes, when someone ignores the signs, the sea grows quiet. Watching. Not every land is empty. Not every silence is permission. And not every beautiful place is meant to be owned. Some places are alive. If this story made you uncomfortable, that is because it was never meant to comfort you. The glass house did not fall because it was weak. It fell because it was never supposed to be there. We live in a world where beauty is often mistaken for permission. Where a quiet place is assumed to be empty. Where land that does not speak is believed to have no voice. But nature does not argue. It does not shout. It waits. Elliot believed peace could be built anywhere, as long as money was enough and walls were strong. He believed silence meant safety. But silence is not approval. Sometimes, silence is a warning spoken too softly for proud ears to hear. The sea warned him many times. In signs. In dreams. In mercy. But mercy has a limit. This story is not just about a man and a house. It is about every time we force ourselves into places we were never invited. Every time we ignore the rules written by nature. Every time we choose comfort over respect. Not every shoreline welcomes buildings. Not every land allows wait. Not every peace can be taken. Some places are alive. And when you build on living ground, you are not building a home. You are pressing on a wound. So the next time you see the ocean standing calm, remember this. Calm water does not mean harmless water. Beauty does not mean ownership. And nature always remembers what is taken from it. If you enjoyed this story, do not just listen and leave. Sit with it. Think about it. Let it stay with you. Because the scariest horror is not the mermaid. It is human pride. Thank you for listening. And remember, not every place that looks peaceful is meant to be touched.